Oh, the video. Works? Okay, sweet, awesome. Hello, and welcome to Hackathons 101. This is, I believe, our final workshop in the pre-hacks education series. If you've missed the previous workshops, you can catch them on YouTube. You can also find the links on NAT portal. Sort of what to expect for today is going to be a very high-level overview of what hackathons are, what to expect, what not to expect, and just some tips and tricks for success, pitfalls to avoid, et cetera, et cetera. We're also going to take a detailed look at natHACKS specifically, so some tips and tricks for natHACKS. And yeah, it won't be too technical, just more of the high level, more of a high level workshop. And I guess before we get started, just a quick poll, maybe a quick show of hands. How many people here? Okay, sweet, one. Then you might know already what we're talking about, but for those of you, if natHACKS is your first hackathon, the 64 hours, we hope that that's going to be super fun, and you'll get to see in just a bit. All right, so I am in my final year of comp sci at the U of A, and I'm the Chief Logistics Officer at NeurAlbertaTech. What that basically means is managing any tangible assets that NAT owns. So that involves everything from the hardware to the office space that we have on campus, and just basically working with the ops and the events team at NAT. At natHACKS 2023, I am co-president with Cameron. So that involves a lot of management, basically managing the logistics of the event in 3 different cities, since natHACKS is taking place in 3 cities and online at the same time. I have personally not taken part in natHACKS. I've been on the organizing team for close to about 2 years now. But the idea today is that just based on my experience, whatever hackathons that I've been in, online as well as in person, hopefully I can share a bit from my experience and add to the content today, so you have a bit of value to take home. And just as and the official documentation of natHACKS. So first things first, what are hackathons? Now most of you might be familiar, you probably have heard of like case competition. Some people call it technical case competitions or technical pitching as well. There isn't really a one-size-fits-all definition of a hackathon. It completely depends. You might have different themes, different tracks, a different level of difficulties, so it completely depends. The way I like to think about it is any space where you feel like you get to learn and you get to grow. So you get to grow your networking skills, presentation and public speaking skills, your technical skills as well. If you feel like you get to learn something and you get to take something of value away from it, I would call that a successful hackathon experience. With the effort that we've been putting in for natHACKS 2023, that's precisely what we hope to deliver this year. Sweet. So we can just jump right into an overview of natHACKS and take a look at the timeline, things to keep in mind, important rules and regulations that most of you probably already know. But just on the safer side, we're going to go over that super quick. Rules and regulations, I'm pretty sure if you're participating in natHACKS, you're already following these. But if in case there's any last-minute panic buttons to press, you can just let us know after the workshop, and we're happy to help. So all code must be developed during the hacking period. Now, of course, you can brainstorm project ideas before the hackathon with or without your teammates. We can't and we won't stop you from doing that. But just to keep it fair for every team participating, all lines of code that you write should just be during the hacking period. Team sizes, minimum 5, maximum 6. To be eligible for prizes, at least half of your teammates, 50% of your teammates must reside in Alberta. And confirm that your hardware works. So as soon as you pick up your hardware, I believe it's right after the opening ceremony, as soon as you pick it up, just make sure that it works, make sure that it connects with your device, and it basically does what it's intending to do. And please keep the timeline in mind. So I have a slide on the timeline, the hacking period, the submission period, as well as the judging. We're also going to have workshops during the hackathon. You can find more information on NAT Portal, which also I feel like everyone should have access to NAT Portal by now if you're participating at natHACKS. If not, then let us know and we can help troubleshoot that. So the timeline at natHACKS, it actually starts tomorrow, November 16th, 7 p.m. MT, and it runs Thursday through Sunday, 10 a.m. MT. So that gives you a 64-hour hacking period. And the last 2 hours of the hacking period is going to be saved for submissions. So on Sunday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. MT. A quick note, I guess, please don't keep the report work and the demo video and whatever you need to prepare for your submission for the last 2 hours. It usually takes longer than you expect, so maybe save a longer block of period for that. The judging period right after the submissions, we have those for a couple of hours, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. MT. That's also where you get a chance, if you're participating in person in Edmonton, you also get a chance to pitch your presentation, pitch your idea to the judges. Quick note, the judging rubric should be out on NAT Portal by EOD tomorrow, November 16th by EOD. So what exactly does the submission look like? Just a quick overview. You have to have a summary that is approximately 250 words. It doesn't seem like a lot, so you kind of have to be succinct, but at the same time include relevant details. There's also a project presentation, so that would be usually like a 2-minute video presentation. Early natHACKS years, we had it at 5 minutes. But I feel like this year we made it 2 minutes because we're trying to keep it quick. We have a lot more teams participating, so it's going to be a 2-minute video, and a rubric for the same will also be shared, hopefully on NAT Portal. The code repo, you of course need a GitHub repo link, a public GitHub repo link, which will also be submitted on DevPost. And as I mentioned, all code in there must be developed only during the hacking period. A live presentation, yes, if you're taking part in person at the U of A, then you get to pitch your presentation in person live to the judges present at the U of A. There's also a more detailed slide where we look at how to write a good summary, tips and tricks for the presentation and the submission guideline. So in just a bit, we'll get to that. So some general tips and tricks for hackathons. So not necessarily natHACKS. You can extrapolate this to any hackathon that you take part in. Planning before working. It's not a good idea to jump right into the code. Always try to plan, have a to-do list. You can have a checklist of things that you want to do. And then based on your teammates' strengths and weaknesses, you can divide those tasks. It's also a good idea to use visual aids. So you can use flowcharts and whatever may help you plan it better. What I've noticed is flowcharts usually help you plan the scope of the project and also decide what goes in sequentially when you're trying to code the solution. So that's always a good idea. And planning before working, so especially at natHACKS, when you have 64 hours at the hackathon, you might as well spend the first hour trying to plan and figure out what your project includes and what it doesn't. Budget enough time for the report. As I mentioned, usually, oftentimes it takes longer than you expect. So it's a good idea to block out a longer period for that. And if you finish early, then there's no harm done. Good communication between hardware and software. Once you make sure that the hardware actually works and you've collected the right hardware kit, in the sense that, sort of just like your teammates, you want to play the hardware's strengths. So you want to use it for what it is meant for. and make sure that your hardware and software communicate properly, so you're using it properly. And it doesn't have to be visible in the code, but you just have to make sure that you're using it what it's supposed to be used for. Familiarize yourself with the rubrics. The submission and judging rubrics should be out on NatPortal soon enough. And you just want to make sure that you're familiar with them. Make sure you're delivering exactly what is asked of you. Take advantage of the workshops. A lot of resources on NatPortal, pre-recorded workshops. There's also data sets, project ideas, so a lot of resources for you guys to use during the hackathon. So definitely make use of that. And networking during the hackathon. So don't forget that we have mentors available whenever you need them to ask them questions, as well as the organizers as well. But at the same time, team collaboration, you can just talk to people around you. The biggest advantage of like an in-person hackathon, especially natHACKS, 64 hours, you're around so many people, and we do encourage collaboration. So just like talk around, maybe you can help them out with something, maybe they can help troubleshoot some issues for you. So definitely take that networking opportunity. Sweet. So just to sort of reiterate what I mentioned, a lot of resources on NatPortal. If you don't already have access, let us know and we can help with that. Networking, who may seem strangers first, they can most likely be connections after the hackathon as well. So don't be afraid to reach out to people. Mentors are also available whenever you need them. Feel free to bug them. They're here to help. And sleep and eat. I can't stress this point enough. Out of everything that you see on the screen right now, this is probably the most important one. Your brain really does need it. It's a 64-hour hackathon. It could be that you lose track of time. And with all those lines of code, maybe you forget to eat and sleep regularly. So while the organizers are there to remind you to take regular breaks, keep yourself hydrated, and eat regularly, please make sure that you do, because you really need it. And a quick note on that, we are giving out meals in all 3 in-person locations, so hopefully that serves as an incentive to keep eating, keep sleeping on time. Out of the 64 hours, you want to spend some hours maybe sleeping, and keep yourself hydrated. Prototypes, so just a general concept of hackathons in general. Nobody expects you to present a perfect solution. You don't want to go for a product that's market ready, but rather a more realistic goal is to have an MVP, a minimum viable product, something that you can present at the end of the day, at the end of the hackathon, as your solution to a problem. And you can always have something for the future scope of the problem. So you don't need a market ready product, just an MVP. And planning, I feel like I already stressed this point before, that definitely plan before working. You may not realize, but it really helps you down the line. So maybe at the end of day 1 or day 2, you'll be able to see where the planning helps you. Some quick tips and tricks about the submission, what it should look like, and how do you break it down to make it more polished. Sorry. So yeah, there's only about, say, 250 words for you to convey the main idea of the project, and you want to be succinct and you want to summarize the main idea, but at the same time, you don't want to leave out any details. So again, there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. It completely depends on a case-by-case basis on what the perfect submission looks like. But the trick is to find the right balance between not keeping it too simple, not including simple details, as in if it's implicit knowledge by looking at your project, then you don't want to include that detail. But at the same time, you don't want to make it too detailed, because then you're not leaving enough words for you to convey the main idea of the project. So in a succinct manner, you can clearly and concisely explain the main idea of the project, sort of like the motivation and the goal of the project and what the results were. So you can communicate all of that in 250 words. And again, planning the whole thing before working on it definitely helps, because the last thing you want is that kind of situation where a part of your submission seems polished, but the rest of it is just rushed. And believe me, when the judges look at that, when anyone later on finds your DevPost project, they will be able to tell. So always plan before you start working on something. So what would a submission look like? How can you break it down? I feel like it's easier to break it down into these 4 sections, and then it's easier to work on it. So the introduction to the project, the goals of the project, how you accomplish those goals, and the project sent off. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory, but just to go over them super quick. The intro, you can introduce the team, your teammates, and the project itself. It's usually a good idea to use somewhat of a hook in the first 1 or 2 lines of the summary, and a hook can be anything that grabs the reader's attention. So it can be numbers, it can be sort of like a hook question that really makes them think, am I dealing with this problem? Do I know people who are dealing with this problem? It's a good idea to use a hook. For example, we had at natHACKS 2022, one of the winners, they had a project that was dealing with early detection of sleep apnea. So as you could imagine, with those kind of projects, say sleep apnea, finding statistics on that wasn't terribly hard. So a good idea would be to find some sort of numbers that they can pull online with credible sources, of course, and mention that in the first line. So when they look at those kind of statistics, the reader feels like, oh, okay, this is actually a serious problem that you're trying to solve here. And it's a good way to start the project introduction. The goals and the how, you sort of want to use this kind of a format. It's a good idea too. These are, of course, just suggestions. Sort of like the Google's XYZ format. So more context about the problem, just more background information for the reader to know what exactly you're working with, how your team solved it. So that's a good place to mention what the team's roles were, what hardware, what software you used, and why. And then the results, basically the outcome of the 64 hours that you spent at the hackathon. That's a good format to use to explain the goals and the how of the project. And finally, the project send-off, just maybe the last 1 or 2 lines that you also want to keep impactful, just like the first 2 lines. What you can do is, it can either be just a flex about the project, it can be something that really makes the reader think, because your idea, the goal is to make your project and your submission memorable. If you make it remarkable, then that's the key. As long as the judges remember, like, wow, I think this was actually cool. So you want to pull that off in the last 2 lines. So presentation guide, if you are in person and if you are speaking in front of judges, what does that look like, and how can you polish that? So some things to keep in mind. It can also kind of look like the summary you submit on DevPost, just starting with an introduction of the team and the project itself. You can also mention who was working on the front end, the back end, the hardware, all of that for the introduction of the presentation. You can restate the goals of your project. You can use pretty much the same words you used in the summary on DevPost. Don't hesitate to do that. As long as it conveys the main idea of your project, feel free to reuse that whenever and wherever. Briefly touch on the software hardware of the project. Now, of course, this is the most important aspect, because at natHACKS, it's likely to find hardware-centric solutions. So definitely mention the technical aspects of your project in your presentation, but at the same time, you can't go in too much detail because you get a limited amount of time. Give a demonstration of your project. Now, this can be anything from just a screen recording of someone working with the UI of your project, or it can be an actual camera recording of someone using the hardware and demonstrating how the project works. So it can be either or, but it's a good idea to include that in the presentation. And finally, you want to conclude and give them an impactful statement, just like how you ended the summary, just something for the judges to remember your project by. And I think that's a quick end. That's most of what I wanted to say. I do want to say, I did want to end on a cliche note. So I guess I want to say, at any hackathon, natHACKS at any hackathon, winning or losing shouldn't matter as much. It shouldn't be a make or break. Of course, winning is nice, but it shouldn't be the main goal of the hackathon. As long as you feel like you learned something and you got to grow your skills, essentially, I feel like everyone's a winner then, at the end of the day. I know, it sounds cliche, but I promised myself I was going to end on that note. So with that, thank you so much for coming. natHACKS starts tomorrow, so all the very best for that. And I'm going to stick around for questions, if any. Thanks. Ooh, of natHACKS?
Yeah.
From last year, or you mean this year? Because there might be some things I can't say.
Yeah, I guess what do you, oh, like you can't say for this year? Like what you're most looking forward to?
Should I say that? I mean, they'll get to see it tomorrow, so.
Let's not ruin the surprise.
Yeah.
So from last year.
From last year, though, something really interesting I saw that was, I guess it was kind of expected that a lot of people from Comp Sci came in, but I guess what that brought along was they had software experience, but not a lot of hardware experience. Like say when it comes to neurotechnology hardware, oftentimes I found teams where it's the first time using that kind of hardware. And it was amazing to see like hour 0, like hour 1 to hour 64. Last year as well, it was 64 hours last summer. And it was just amazing to see what progress they've made. Like not only did they pick up actual skills and actual hardware knowledge, neuroscience knowledge, but they actually came up with an MVP, actually a project that can end up on the leaderboard. And we all enjoyed the presentation. So I guess that was really nice to see how much can happen in just 64 hours. Sweet. We good?